Let's talk about the NAR settlement, or the National Association of Realtors lawsuit settlement that just came down in the last day or so. So a judge still has to approve it as far as I know. And let me preface this by saying I am not a legal expert. I'm not even an expert in real estate. But I have some thoughts for you because I am involved in the mortgage process. I do talk to buyers about their home and what they're paying for the house and that kind of thing. And I do deal with their agents. Matter of fact, I deal with agents on both sides of the transaction. We deal mostly with a buyer's agent to make sure we have the right documentation for the buyer. But there are times when I am dealing with the selling agent to get clarification on different things about the property that my borrowers are buying. Now, something you need to know about me. I am a licensed real estate agent in the state of North Carolina. Although my real estate license is inactive, I do take my continuing education every year to keep that license available to me should I decide to go back into real estate. And I don't have a dog in this fight. What came down in the law and out of this suit and the settlement. But I'm reading some things that are kind of concerning to me. I'm hearing different experts talk about it. And experts, okay? So they're about as expert as I am. So they're giving opinions. I'm going to give you mine. So some things that I think you ought to think about and how this could be maybe a negative impact on buyers is because there is no discussion with the listing agent, with the seller about the buyer, and that's what this is. So there's no discussion with the listing agent, with the seller about the buyer's portion. Traditionally, how these things work is your listing agent is going to charge you X percentage of the sales price to sell your house, to put it on a multi-listing service, to do all your media outreach stuff, to make sure that people know that your house is out there for sale, putting in a yard sign, doing open houses, all those things that real estate agents do. And the list of what real estate agents do for you is very long. And maybe sometime I'll share that with you. But as far as this goes, because there is no discussion on the buyer's agent's commission or their percentage, I think what you're going to find is that sellers, the money has to come from somewhere. Let me just start there. The money to pay an agent to do the work either comes from the seller or it's going to come from the buyer. And I can tell you from personal experience, a lot of buyers are not in a position, or nor would they want to directly pay an agent for their services. I hope that I'm wrong about that, but I think that's one thing that we're going to see that's going to be troubling with this, okay? I think you're going to see that some people are going to want to try to do this transaction, purchase a house, without an agent working on their behalf. So you have listing agents, you have buying agents, and then you have something called dual agency and even designated dual agency, at least in the state of North Carolina. And so the listing agent, their responsibility, first of all agents have a responsibility to the seller, okay, in the state of North Carolina. So they if you don't have a buyer agency agreement, at least the way the law was interpreted, I don't know how this is going to change with this new settlement, but the way the law was listed, you as an agent, you have a responsibility to represent the seller regardless. The only time you would represent a buyer is if you had a buyer's agency agreement, which spells out pretty clearly that you're working on the buyer's behalf, meaning that you're not going to share anything about the buyer that's going to help the seller in negotiations. Otherwise, without a buyer's agency agreement, you have an obligation to help the seller out. So that's one thing that you need to know. And there's a pamphlet, I'm sure it's going to be redrawn now in the state of North Carolina, that's called Working with Real Estate Agents. It's something that agents have had to have with them upon their first contact with a buyer where they know this buyer is going to go and look at homes. So the first significant, I forgot the terminology for it, but the first significant contact they have with them, where they're going to be representing them, they have to tell them, listen, I'm either going to be representing the seller or I'm going to be representing you. And if I want to be representing you, we need to have a buyer's agency agreement. Okay. So I don't know how that's going to be impacted. Now, traditionally, how this has worked for decades is that, let's say you have a buyer's agency agreement with an agent, and you go and your agent makes an offer to the seller's agent, the listing agent, and you agree upon a price, and then you're under contract. Okay, you've got a binding contract. So what happens at closing is whatever that percentage might be, that amount of money comes from the seller's proceeds to pay both agents. Okay. And for the longest time, I think most people are happy with that. Most people understand that these agents are out there busting their hump for them. There are so many, like I said, so many things that agents do for you throughout the course of the transaction. They keep you out of a lot of hot water. As a buyer's agent, they have a responsibility to discover and disclose any material facts to you. And listen, you're talking about a professional here, right? You're talking about somebody who has been trained and understands the real estate market and who is supposed to advise you as a buyer whether or not this home that you have just fell in love with is really worth what you're going to be paying for it. And if there's anything hidden that maybe you're not even thinking of, okay? So that's what a buyer's agent does for you. And they negotiate price for you. They don't tell the seller, hey, you know what? I know he can afford to pay $500,000 when really you're wanting to get the house for $450,000. They're to go to that seller and say, look, our top offer is $450,000. And that's it. So even if they know you've got the money to go $500,000, they can't tell the seller that. So they work on your behalf. So anyway, that's how agency works and has worked up to this point. Here is my fear. Now, these experts I was talking about earlier, they're saying that what's going to happen is the real estate prices are going to be slashed. I don't think that's true at all. Now, time will tell, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen practically is sellers' agents are going to be advising their seller. These listing agents are going to say, look, even though the buyer is responsible for the commission paid to their agent, you may have to give a concession to the buyer to pay their agent anyway. So there's going to be that consideration put into their price. So I don't think you're going to see any great drop in the price of real estate. And even if you did, let's say the commission is 5%, and the agents are splitting that 5%. That's 2.5% for each agent, right? The seller's agent, the listing agent. You're talking about a 2.5% difference in price. That is, depending on the price of the house, can be a significant amount of money. But if it doesn't come from the seller, are you going to be willing to pay that? And this is where I get a little nervous hearing about this change. Because I think what's going to happen is really maybe three things. I think for a lot of people who are on a shoestring budget buying their first house, they're not going to be able to afford to pay the buyer's agent's commission. Okay? So if they can't get it from the seller and they don't feel good about signing a contract that says, hey, Mr. Agent, if you represent me as a buyer's agent, I guarantee you that I'm going to pay you this percentage of the final sales price. They're just going to forego the agent altogether. And they're going to try to negotiate this minefield of buying a house without an agent involved to help them out in any way whatsoever. And friends, that's not a good thing. You're stepping into something, you don't do this every day. You don't know the pitfalls. You don't know all the ins and outs of real estate. And even if you think you do, you're not an expert. You're not licensed in it. You're not schooled in it. You don't do this every day. Hardly anyone does. Even people who have bought multiple homes or investors, they don't do it every single day. And things change through time, and you may get caught with your pants down and get spanked because you didn't have that representation. The other fear that I have is that people are going to go to the listing agent and ask them to present an offer. Now, in the past, when you did that, that's called dual agency. At that point, what you do with that seller's agent is you put them in a position where they're nothing more than a referee. Now, per law in the state of North Carolina, a dual agent cannot represent either side. All they can do is deal in material facts. Okay? That seller picked that agent for a reason. Do you not believe that there's probably, in some of these cases, agents that are going to go to their seller, even in a dual agency situation, and say things about you to the seller to help them out? I mean, you'd hope that wouldn't happen with professionals. Okay, you'd hope that wouldn't happen. But you're putting them in a very, very difficult position. Okay, so that's another thing that might happen. Now, one other thing that might happen, and I think this might be a good thing, actually. One of the things that most agents hate more than anything in this world is doing open houses. I've done some myself. A lot of times, who shows up? It's just people that don't have anything better to do on a weekend. It's neighbors. It's people that are just curious about the house. They want to see what the neighbor's selling, what the neighbor's done with their house. They're just being nosy. I'm not saying that legitimate buyers don't sometimes show up at open houses, but for the most part, it's a waste of the agent's time for most agents. I won't say that's true in all markets, but I've seen that a lot in my career, and I've heard from other agents. It's almost like being punished. It's like being busted down to a first-year agent because they always get the grunt work. So I think open houses are going to become more popular, which I think is a good thing. I think it's going to be a thing where people go and preview these houses before they go under contract, or they have a buyer's agent work on their behalf, because they don't want to sign that agreement until they know they got a house that they might want to buy. So that might be a good thing. Anyway, I just think you need to be careful. People end up telling you more than they really should. And as a buyer going into an open house, what's the chances you might say something in front of that listing agent? You don't have an agreement with them yet that they could use against you in negotiations with the seller. So you just have to be super careful not to tell them any personal financial details. You can't fall in love with the house in front of them and let them see the stars in your eyes that this is the house of your dreams. You're going to have to be coached, and that's where having an agent is so important. Let the agent be there with you to guide you through this process. I wouldn't want the listing agent anywhere in the house if it were me, if I was going to go look at one. I don't know. What do you think? You think this is a good change? Do you think it's really going to save people money? Or do you think it's going to take an already difficult transaction and make it even worse? People are worth something. Their expertise, their training, the years they have spent working in a profession, that is worth something. And basically what this lawsuit is saying is, maybe it's not worth what everybody thinks it's worth. And I think, my friends, that's a mistake. Real estate agents are some of the best people I know. I've got many that are friends of mine, personal friends. We do things together. Like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight one way or the other, but I know they've got the best interest of their sellers. And when they're working as a buyer's agent, they have the best interest of their buyers in mind. Don't shortcut yourself in this process. I'll try to do an update video as I learn more about how all this is playing out, and as I get more information from agents that are talking to me. Maybe some agents are going to watch this video and completely disagree with me. That's fine. I'd like to hear your comments. I'd like to do some follow-up with you. I want to find out what your perspective is as an agent. If you're a buyer or a seller, I'd love to hear from you as well. Hey, listen, my contact information is at the end of this video. I know this is a much longer video than I normally do, but maybe it sparks some conversation. Maybe it gets you to thinking about things a little bit. God bless you. Have a great day.